All right, deep divers, buckle up. Ever build like a cool app in Python and think, how on earth do I let users save their work?
Yeah.
Today's the day we demystify that. We're taking a deep dive into Tkinter file dialogues. Specifically, this little gem called AskSaveAsFile.
It's one of those functions that might seem small, but it plays a huge role in making applications feel, polished, professional.
Right.
Yeah,
You don't want your users digging through a maze of folders just to save a file.
exactly. AskSaveAsFile lets developers integrate those familiar save file dialog boxes, the ones, you see in every other application, directly into their Tkinter creations.
Yeah, it's all about keeping things user-friendly. Make sure that even someone who's never touched your application knows exactly what to do.
Absolutely. And it actually ties in nicely with a core principle of good UX design, consistency.
All right.
When users encounter familiar elements in your application, it reduces cognitive load and makes them feel right at home.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Instead of wrestling with an unfamiliar interface, they can focus on what really matters, using your app. To really see this in action, we dug up a great code snippet from our friends at plus2net.com.
It's a fantastic illustration of how AskSaveAsFile works in practice, and it's surprisingly concise.
Okay, so the code kicks things off by importing the essentials, Tkinter for building the GUI, and AskSaveAsFile Dialog, which, as you might have guessed, is where our star function lives.
That's all about setting up the stage. We create a simple Tkinter window with a label that says Save File and a button labeled Save. It's basic for now, just to demonstrate the core functionality.
Right, no need to overcomplicate things when we're trying to highlight this specific function. But here's where the real magic happens, and it's all tied to that Save button when the user clicks it.
A function called Save File swings into action, and what's at the heart of this function?
Let me guess.
You guessed it, AskSaveAsFile.
Obviously. And that's where the user gets to take control. Browsing their file system, choosing where they want to save it, naming their file, the whole 9 yards.
Precisely. They see that familiar dialog box pop up, and it feels intuitive, right in line with what they're used to from other applications.
Absolutely. But hold on, what happens if they get cold feet? They open the dialog, but then decide, yeah, I don't want to save after all. Maybe they hit the cancel button or just like the X in the corner.
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of kind of robust error handling, even in seemingly simple interactions.
Because we don't want our app crashing just because someone changed their mind. Right?
Exactly. Luckily, our trusty code snippet from plus2net.com has a really elegant solution for this, using an if file statement.
Oh, yeah, I see that in the code. So what's going on behind the scenes with that?
Basically, it's like the code takes a quick peek to see if the user actually went through with saving the file.
Oh, okay. So if they hit save, we're good to go.
Exactly. The code sees that a file has been chosen, jumps into action, opens the file in write mode, that's what mode W means, and gets it ready to receive whatever data we want to store.
And that's where our file object, creatively named fob in the example, comes in.
Precisely. The file object is like our pipeline, the connection between our Python code and the actual file being saved on the user system.
So in the example, it writes, welcome to plus2net, into the chosen file. But in a real application, this could be anything, lines of code, user settings, you name it.
Exactly. But what if the user chickened out and hit cancel?
Yeah, what happens then?
That's where the else part of our trusty if file statement comes in, right?
Right.
Yeah. If the code sees that no file was chosen, maybe the user hit cancel, closed the window, or something went wrong, it just gracefully moves to the else block.
Yeah.
In this case, it simply prints no file chosen, no drama, no errors, just a smooth user experience.
It's like having a safety net built right into your code.
I like that analogy. It's subtle, but these little error handling touches make a huge difference in how polished and reliable your application feels to the end user.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious, can we jazz up this AskSaveAsFile function with some customization? You know, can we make it our own?
Oh, absolutely. Tkinter gives you a surprising amount of control over the look and feel of these file dialogues. It's all about tailoring the experience to your specific application.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these customization options. I see in our source material, there's this thing called initial dir.
Ah, yes. That's a handy one.
What does that do?
Imagine you're building an application where users are likely saving files to a specific folder, like their documents directory. With initial dir, you can set that as the starting point for the file dialog.
Oh,
yeah.
That makes sense.
Instead of making them navigate through their entire file system, they're conveniently dropped right where they need to be most of the time.
I like it. What else can we tweak?
Well, we can make things super clear with the title option.
Okay.
This lets you customize the text that appears in the title bar of the dialog box itself.
Ah,
Instead of just a generic save file, you could have something like save your masterpiece or choose a location, whatever fits your app's vibe.
I'm already picturing the possibilities. It's amazing how these little touches can make your application feel so much more personalized.
Absolutely. And speaking of personalization, there's file types,
Okay.
which is especially handy.
What's that one do?
This lets you specify what types of files the user is allowed to save.
Oh, that's huge. So if I'm building a simple text editor, I can make sure people are saving their work as .txt files.
Exactly. And to make things even smoother, you can use default extension to automatically add .txt to the file name if the user doesn't type it themselves.
Saves them a few keystrokes.
Exactly.
Ensures consistency across saved files.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's the little things.
I see we can also pre-fill a suggested file name with initial file.
Yes.
So for example, if I'm working on a document that autosaves periodically, it could use the last saved file name as a starting point.
You got it. It's all about anticipating the user's needs and streamlining the experience. Now here's one that I'm particularly fond of. Confirm overwrite.
Okay, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Tell me more about confirm overwrite.
Picture this. You're working on a super important document, maybe a presentation that's due tomorrow.
Been there. The pressure's on.
You go to save your work, but you're not paying close attention to the file name or location. You accidentally save it with the same name as an existing file, maybe an earlier version.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And without realizing it, you just overwrote hours of work. Ouch. I can feel the panic setting in already.
That's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what confirm overwrite is designed to prevent.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a safety net for, forgetful users like me.
You could say that. By default, confirm overwrite is set to true in AskSaveAsFile.
Okay.
This means if the user tries to save a file that would overwrite an existing one, Tkinter automatically pops up a confirmation dialog. Like, are you really sure you want to do this? Exactly. It gives the user a chance to pause, double-check, and potentially avert a major headache.
That's a lifesaver. It's like having a second set of eyes looking out for potential disasters.
Precisely. And of course, if for some reason you don't want this confirmation dialog popping up, maybe in a very specific use case where overwriting is expected and understood, you can always set confirm overwrite to false.
Gotcha. So many options to fine-tune the experience. As we're going through all these customization options, it reminds me of something that often trips people up when they're first learning about Tkinter's file dialogues. AskSaveAsFile versus AskSaveAsFileName.
Ah, yes. The classic conundrum.
They sound similar.
They do, yeah.
Understanding the subtle difference is key to using them effectively.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. What's the deal with these two seemingly identical twins? Okay, so both of these functions bring up that familiar save file dialog box.
Right.
But what happens behind the scenes when the user hits save? That's where the real difference lies.
You're spot on. With AskSaveAsFileName, Tkinter keeps things straightforward. It simply returns the full path and name of the file the user chose, all packaged up as a string.
So if you just need to know where the user wants to save the file, AskSaveAsFileName is the way to go.
Exactly. It's like asking for directions instead of a ride.
Okay,
You get the information you need to handle the file yourself.
makes sense, but then what's happening with AskSaveAsFile?
Now, AskSaveAsFile is more of a full-service experience. It doesn't just tell you where the file is. It actually opens the file in write mode. Mode equals W behind the scenes and hands you back a file object ready to go.
That's what fob was in the code example.
Yes.
It's like getting handed the keys to a brand new car ready to drive.
Perfect analogy. With AskSaveAsFile, you can immediately start writing data into the file using that file object without having to manually open it yourself.
So it's really about choosing the right tool for the job. If you just need the file's location, go with AskSaveAsFileName. If you're ready to start writing data right away, AskSaveAsFile is your best bet.
Couldn't have put it better myself. It's these subtle distinctions that really separate the coding novices from the pros.
It's funny, we interact with these file dialogues all the time without giving them a second thought. But when you stop and really understand the code that makes them tick, it's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. It's like anything else. The more you understand how something works, the more you appreciate the elegance and ingenuity behind it.
Totally. And speaking of elegance and ingenuity, earlier we touched on AskOpenFile. I'm wondering if we could take a moment to connect the dots. How do these saving and opening functions work together in the real world?
That's a fantastic question. And it gets to the heart of building a seamless user experience. Imagine, for instance, that you're creating a simple text editor in Tkinter.
Okay.
AskSaveAsFile, as we've seen, lets the user save their document for the first time or choose a new location to save it to.
Right, giving them full control over where their masterpiece is stored.
Yeah. Exactly. But what if they want to come back to their work later, open that file up, and pick up right where they left off? That's where AskSaveAsFile enters the picture. It provides that familiar open file dialog, letting the user browse their file system, select their document, and load it back into the editor.
So it's like two sides of the same coin, saving and opening working hand in hand to manage the entire life cycle of a document.
Precisely. And when you combine these functions with other Tkinter elements, buttons, text fields, menus, you can build incredibly powerful and user-friendly applications, all with that consistent native look and feel.
It's amazing how these seemingly small building blocks can unlock so much potential, right?
And it really is, and that's the beauty of coding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Taking these fundamental concepts and assembling them in creative ways to build something new and exciting.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Well, deep divers, there you have it. We've journeyed into the depths of Tkinter file dialogues, exploring AskSaveAsFile in detail, comparing it to its sibling AskSaveAsFile name, and even taking a peek at how it all fits into the grand scheme of application development.
Lots of good stuff.
As always, you'll find links to the source material, additional resources, and maybe even a fun Tkinter project or two over on the show notes. Until next time, happy coding, and remember,
Keep practicing.
keep those file dialogues polished.
And your users happy.